हेलो गाइस, स्वागत करता हूँ आप सबका एक और नई वीडियो में। आशा करता हूँ आप लोग अच्छे होंगे। तो आज की ये वीडियो काफ़ी रॉ वीडियो होने वाली है और ऐसा इसलिए है क्योंकि लास्ट मंथ जो पीओडी की मीटिंग हुई थी, लास्ट वीक जो पीओडी की मीटिंग हुई थी, उसमें क्या-क्या बातचीत हुई और पीओडी मीटिंग में पीओडी मेंबर क्यों बनाए जाते हैं, पीओडी मेंबर क्यों बनाए जाते हैं, उनका काम क्या होता है, कैसे उनको अपॉइंट किया जाता है, वो सब इसमें बताया गया है इस मीटिंग में। पूरे 2 घंटे की मीटिंग हुई थी, तो मैं वो पूरी मीटिंग को अटैच कर दूँगा यहाँ पर, आप लोग बिल्कुल अच्छे से देख सकते हैं। इससे आप लोगों के 2 फ़ायदे होंगे। एक तो आपको पता चलेगा पीओडी मेंबर कैसे बनते हैं और क्यों बनना चाहिए पीओडी मेंबर। दूसरा आपको पता चलेगा कि आउटलायर पर काम कैसे किया जाता है। यहाँ पर वो भी एक छोटा-सा ग्लिम्प्स आपको देखने को मिलेगा, आउटलायर पर काम कैसे करना है, तो आप लोगों के दोनों तरफ से बेनिफिट होने वाला है। तो वीडियो को आप 2x पर देख लेना, मैं आपको रिकमेंड करूँगा कि आप 2x पर देखें, वरना आपका ज़्यादा टाइम वेस्ट हो जाएगा और जो पार्ट आपको नेसेसरी ना लगे उसको आप स्किप भी कर सकते हो। तो चलिए वीडियो को स्टार्ट करते हैं।
I'll train you on that project. I'll test you right after this session. You'll get a link for a test, it's gonna take you around 1.5 hours to complete, but I'll keep the link open till 12 p.m., 12 a.m. tonight. So I'll keep like the form will keep accepting responses. You'll have to fill out that form. Based on the results, you'll then be selected to be part of a managed pod. Now, these pods are not your project related pods, so they won't be getting dissolved anytime soon. These pods are our way of giving structure to the freelance work that you're currently doing, but more on a full time or basis. So or part time, like whatever. So as a pod member, you will be required to spend at least 20 hours per week on the platform, doing tasks on the platform. But since you're giving such a high quality and your time onto the platform itself, we will be giving you certain perks. These perks include you getting priority access to all of the tasks and project on the platform. You will also be prioritized in each and every way possible. Any issues that you're facing, there's a dedicated support channel for that. If a project needs super attempters, super reviewers, like whatever layers there are, you will be the first ones who will be prioritized to get access to those layers. And overall, we'll try to make sure that you never run out of work, because you've already shown that you are very good in understanding the projects. You have shown your technical expertise, and based on that, we will make sure that you get into a pod and you never run out of work to do. So yeah. So let's dive into the session itself. I think it's 6:36, so we can start off. For those of you who have joined right now, I hope you were able to get some parts of that. But even if you didn't get that, we'll cover it again in this session. So I know like a lot of you are already working on that Outlier, but some of you are very new to the platform. Maybe joined last week or last week. Let me tell you really briefly about what exactly Outlier is and what it is that we do. How do we come into picture when you talk about all of this AI revolution that is happening all around you? So Outlier as a company, we connect experts like yourself. So we believe that you are experts in maybe coding, and coding is a very vast field. You could be experts in some subdomain inside coding, maybe data science or AI/ML or blockchain, security, cloud, etc. You could be expert in any of those fields, and what we want to do at Outlier is that we want to transfer the expertise that you have and give that expertise to these AI models so that they can become better and better over time. Here it is written that you share your expertise to make AI more human, but in reality, we want to supersede the capabilities of an individual human. We want to create something that we call as an AGI. And if some of you have been like really into this field, you might know of something called as the ARC benchmark. So it was earlier like they created this benchmark which had like a bunch of questions and a bunch of prompts and response pairs and etc. So the thing is, any model which scores above an 80% on an ARC benchmark is technically an AGI. And the thing is, we have managed to reach 80%. So there was just like one model which managed to reach 80% on that ARC benchmark test. And it turned out that per query cost for that model was exceeding $1,000. So technically we have managed that, but our local models that you and I interact with on a daily basis, they do not have those capabilities. Imagine this, you might you might have wondered about it. Like, it was not a long time ago that we actually saw ChatGPT 3 come into the market, which was kind of good, but it wasn't great. You know, you could ask it to write some basic Python code or etc. But if you get a little bit complex, if you give it like certain very niche requirements, it would fail a lot. So, and compare it with where we are today, the chat GPT 3 or O3 and O2s and, oh, sorry, not O2, O1s, O3s. Even right now, there's a lot of different things happening. There's Claude model. There's also DeepSeek, which recently like sort of set the entire AI revolution on fire. So, all of these models, have you ever wondered what is exactly that these companies are doing in their backend to make their models better? Are they completely training new different models? Or are they maybe changing the algorithm? Or are they just using more GPUs to train their models? Like, what exactly is it that is happening in these companies so that they are able to produce like better and better models every 2 or 3 months? The reason why they're able to do that lies in what Outlier does. The bottleneck currently for all of these AI models is actually at the data part of it. And at Outlier, we provide this data to these AI companies. These AI companies want data where the models are currently failing. For example, let's take Vikalp here. So let's imagine like Vikalp is OpenAI or Microsoft or any other company that is super into AI space that has their own model. And I am Outlier and I come up to you and I say, hey, I know that you have recently released your O3 model, which is super advanced by the way. I think I have some data which you can use to train your AI model to make it better over time. And then you're like, okay, sure, let's show me the data that you have. And then I show you the data, and it turns out that the data I'm giving you has very easy prompts. It could be, create a code to find the factorial of a function using recursion or something. It could be that basic of a code. So you, of course, you don't want that type of code. You don't want that type of data. You expect me to give you the data where your current model is not able to perform. Because why would you fine tune your model to train on data on which it is already very good at? So at Outlier and in this project and in any other project on the platform, what our aim is to reach a point or is to produce data where the models are currently failing, where they're not able to give you a correct answer. So that is what we do. So when you join Outlier, not only do you get to work alongside a lot of like-minded individuals, a lot of experts like yourself, you also get to enjoy a really competitive pay while enjoying the flexibility of working from wherever and wherever you want. So next up, what exactly is a pod and why would you even bother joining it? So a pod, as I mentioned earlier, is a group of really high quality, high focused individuals who are dedicatedly working on the platform. You have to spend, if you are selected to become a pod member, you have to spend around 20 hours every week on the platform. But for that time that you have to spend, we are also going to give you certain benefits. As pod members, you will get priority access to all of the tasks and projects on the platform. There will be a pod lead who is dedicatedly, uh, you know, uh, taking care of your quality, explaining you what you need to do, who is going to help you to improve your skills and perform better on the platform itself. There'll be a dedicated support team to resolve any and all of your issues. And also, there are very high chances that you will be converted or you will be escalated to a reviewer, super attempter, super reviewer level. So, which in itself is like a really big deal because then it shows that we trust you enough that we don't need your task to be reviewed by someone else. Anything that you do directly goes to the client because they have developed a trust over the couple of tasks that we have done earlier. And so far, we have created a lot of coding pods, and I can tell you, like some of them, the entire pods are currently sitting at review layers. We have entire pods sitting at a super attempter layer. We have all of that. So yeah, that I think is the best option of why you should join a pod. And also, I think there is a slightly higher pay rate, although I'm not like 100% sure of that, and it won't be like an extremely high difference. So, but there is a slightly higher pay rate, especially when become attempters, super attempters. There's incentives, there's missions, and everything that goes along with it. Awesome. So next up, let's directly dive down into the project itself. The project I'm going to cover today is called Varna Astrologer. This project was based out of a very difficult project that we had at Outlier for some time called Limmer Astrologer. I don't know if some of you might have worked with Limit Astrology before, but if you have, then congratulations. Like you'll have a revision of that project. This is technically a scaled down version of that. Limit Astrology had a lot more difficulty baked into it, but this one is a little more scaled down. So it's not that difficult to understand. We are going to go over everything in this project, and we are going to cover every little detail. After this session, I'm going to open test link for which I'll show you the QR code. The test link will remain open till 12 tonight. Within that time, you have to then fill out the test. And since this test will ask you to maybe write prompts and write justifications. So we'll have to manually evaluate each and every one of your responses, which is going to take some time. So we are expecting like by tomorrow, day after tomorrow, or maybe by next Monday, we'll reach out to you in case you're selected to become pod members. We won't be releasing any results, by the way. We won't be giving you if you your scores, if you passed, if you failed, anything like that. We'll just be reaching out to the people who are selected to become pod members. And that's going to be how we are going to reach out to you. Yeah. Awesome. So next up, let's look at what exactly is tasking on this particular project. So when you do this project, you're essentially simulating a real world conversation with a chatbot. Your goal is to identify failures in the model's response. So remember, like you want to produce data where the models are not able to give you the correct answer. If they're able to give you a correct answer, you don't want that type of data because model is already pretty well trained on that type of question. So these deviations or any failures or stumping the model, all of these things are exactly the same. So anytime that you hear any of these words, you should just immediately jump back and understand it that you provide a prompt on which the model is not able to give you a correct answer. So what the data that you produce is then used to improve the performance of the model in the future versions. That's pretty much it. Now, next up, there's a couple of concepts, just single turn versus multi-turn. Very quickly, single turn, as the name suggests, if you provide one prompt to the model and you get a response, this conversation that you had with the model right now is a single turn conversation. Now, if you continue this conversation and add another prompt to the model, this then becomes a multi-turn conversation. The From the coding perspective and from like otherwise as well, the continuation of the conversation that you do has to be somewhat relevant to the first prompt that you asked. For example, if in coding you're asking, maybe create a website, create a portfolio website with yellow background and etc. 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 This is your first prompt. The model gives you a response. Your second prompt could be maybe add features to the website or remove some parts of the code or maybe do something else. It cannot be that train an AI model on this data set or something like that, which is completely different. It has to have some relevance to the first prompt. And that is how you define a multi-turn conversation. Now let's quickly go over the workflow of this task. And by the way, is my speed all right for all of you? Am I going too fast? Thumbs up means it's all right. Thumbs down, no. Awesome. We have 60, 70 thumbs up so far. More than 100 thumbs ups. Wow. Awesome. So let me quickly see if this is working. Oh, got it. Is this not working? One second, guys. Let me just quickly. Yes, now it's working. Cool. So the first thing that you do in this particular task is that you define a goal. A goal is very vague. It does not have to be any super specific. A goal could just be, build a portfolio website. That's it. That's the goal. A goal is not an input to the model. It's just used to define, what is it exactly that you want out of this conversation with the model? What is your aim for this conversation with the model? It could be very vague, non-specific, and simple. The goal has to be defined for the entire conversation, not just the first or second turn. It is for all of the conversation that you're about to have with the model. Next up is that you define a prompt. Now, this prompt that you need to define, first of all, there's a couple of specifications, but we'll dive down into exactly what those are in the detailed section. But a major one of these specification is that your prompt should be very objective in nature. It should not have subjectivity. For example, if I provide like certain parts of the code to the model and then ask the model to analyze that code, like analysis can be done in 50 different ways. That means like if I provide the same question to Suresh and Sheikh or Harshal, they'll both or they'll all do different types of analysis and all of them will be correct. None of them will actually be wrong. So that is why we need you to define a prompt which is very objective, which clearly states what it wants out of the model. If you want a website, don't just say, okay, hey, create a website. No, specify each and everything. Make a prompt so that you can have an entire mental picture ready of what the output should look like. So that is what you need to write in the prompt itself. And a majority of the times, like this is something that people's prompt lacks. And a lot of tasks that were rejected on this particular project and in the test as well. So in the test, by the way, you'll be asked to write an entire prompt on your own. So just note down these particular very small things that you need to take care of. So prompt has to be defined in a way where you have to make sure that there's no subjectivity, there's no contradictory statements in the prompt itself. So you provide this prompt to the model. The model will give you two responses, response A and response B. It is the same model and it is giving two responses within the same prompt. So now your job is to see if at least one of these responses is incorrect. If at least one of these responses has any issues, that means the model was not able to give you a correct answer. In that case, you can go ahead and continue with the rest of the task. So this is what we call as deviation. So if it is yes, so you found at least one of these responses incorrect, which is when you found a deviation, and then you can continue with the rest of your task. If both of these responses are perfect, in that case, you then actually need to rewrite the prompt itself. Maybe add some more constraints to it, make it a bit more complex. So when you do that, then again you try that. So this is an iterative process. So you will be like, for example, if you ask the prompt what is 2 plus 2, of course both the models responses are going to give you the correct answer, which is 4. That just means that your prompt is good enough for the model, and the model is able to give you the correct answer every time. So in that case, just like rewrite the prompt, make it more complex. So the level of complexity can reach like astronomically higher. As long as it's following the project guidelines, that's fine. So let's say that you found a deviation, that you found an issue with response A. What then? So when you found an issue, all you need to do is to individually rate response A and individually rate response B. So there's 5 categories in total in which you need to individually rate both of these responses. We'll dive down into what these categories are, how to actually define all of those. Like go into that later on. So we have response A, we have response B. So you rate individually response A, you rate individually response B. Next up, you choose the preferred response. So preferred response is basically which one of them is better. Now there is 3 cases that can happen here. Case number one, where response A is incorrect, it gives you maybe the incorrect code which does not work. In that case, and response B gives you a correct code. So of course, response B is better than response A, in which case your preferred response is response B. Another case that could happen is that maybe response A gives you a code which has 2 errors. Response B has maybe 3 errors, something like that. So response A is closer to the perfect answer than response B, in which case response A is your preferred response. Another case that could happen here is the fact that maybe both of them are equally bad. This is rare, but it could happen. Maybe both of the responses have issues in, let's say, you remember we have to rate them in 5 categories. So maybe both of them have issues in exactly 3 of those categories. And both of them are almost identical in nature, and both of them have issues. In this case, again, we need you to choose which one is better. It's just the case that, this time around, you can choose based on very negligible things as well. So maybe one of the responses has comments in the code which are more descriptive in nature. One of them has comments which are not descriptive in nature. So in that case, you can choose the ones which are more descriptive, and you can choose that as the preferred response. Now, this step is really important because when you choose a preferred response, this preferred response becomes something that you perform a rewrite on. If your preferred response is not perfect, in that case, you need to correct the preferred response to make it a perfect response. If there's any issues here, so maybe this preferred response, or maybe response B also had issues, you have to be the one to correct those issues, to rewrite that response. And after you have rewritten it, that in that case, like, that's pretty much it. If there was only one turn that you need to do, that's the end of the task. You can click on end session and you can click on the submit button. Otherwise, maybe at the start of the task, you are basically defined a couple of criterias. So your prompt has to follow a particular difficulty level, a particular task category, it has to follow programming language, and it has to follow a minimum number of turns. So these are the four things that we need to take care of when you define a particular prompt. So a minimum number of turns is required for every particular task. For example, let's say if in this particular task, the minimum number of turns were 2. In that case, you have not reached the minimum number of turns. In that case, you'll need to write a subsequent prompt. Maybe, if your first prompt was a website, the subsequent or the continuation prompt could be add new features to the website, or you specify the features that you want to add. Again, the model will give you two responses, response A and response B. Again, you have to identify if at least one of these responses is incorrect, which is a deviation here. And again, you have to rate individually the responses. You have to follow the same process, choose a preferred response, rewrite the response. And this time around, you'll have reached the minimum number of turns, in which case you can end the session and submit the task. So this was the entire workflow of an RLHF task on, in this case, this particular task. Are all of you clear on what this workflow is? By the way, there's going to be certain times where I'm going to specifically focus on certain points that you need to remember. At which point I want you all to then come back to your active listening mode and listen to those points very carefully. They could be hints to what is about to come in the test. So last two steps again. Okay. Don't spam, Ramon. Cool. So last two steps were, I think, I was talking about the minimum number of turns. So in every task, you are defined a minimum number of turns to complete. So if it is 2 or 3, maybe you have to do the same process twice or thrice. So first time you define a prompt, you have to find a deviation. You have to choose which one is the preferred response after rating that particular response. You have to rewrite it, and then again you have to define another prompt, which is sort of continuation of the previous prompt, or sort of like in a natural way, what an actual software engineer could ask that particular model. Then again, this cycle then repeats again and again until you have reached a minimum number of turns, at which point you can then go ahead and submit the task. A goal. Okay. Goal is basically the aim of the conversation. Like what do you want out of this conversation? A goal example could be build a portfolio website. That's it. That's very basic, just a very vague uh just statement of what you want out of the model in this particular conversation. The preferred response will be the better one. Which one of these responses is better? Is response A better or is response B better? You just have to identify which one of them is better, and that is then becoming the preferred response. Yes, we will go over an example. In fact, we'll go over a couple of examples in this session. But just before we go into that, you need to have an overall idea of what is it exactly that you need to do. No, goal cannot be that. It has to be something. By the way, the prompt that you write in this particular project cannot be your typical DSA or competitive programming type of prompts. It has to be something that an actual software developer would ask. I know that, DSAs, sorry, I know that DSA is pretty important, but it is important in testing the candidate's abilities. It is not, an actual software engineer would hardly ever use DSA while they're building anything that provides real value on like to people. If they're building any softwares and building any AI models or anything like that, yes, to some extent DSA, they would need to decide which data structures to use, etc., etc. But those typical, find the nth node, or do a binary search or anything like that, those type of questions are something that they do not ask. That is just used for testing purposes. So please do not use your typical DSA or competitive programming type prompts. Okay, we are gonna go over exactly, like I've seen a couple of questions. We are going to go over the detailed instructions now, in which you'll have a better clarity. But before we do that, there's one thing that you need to understand here. See, this is something that is not technically important, but it is important in the terms of what you need to do in the Outlier platform itself. The models that you're going to test are really advanced and not open to the public yet models. They're research based models right now. So there will be times where you won't be able to get any deviations in the model. Maybe you ask the model a particular type of prompt, a particular question, and the model will give you a perfect answer every time. In that case, I first of all, don't get frustrated. That happens to a lot of good contributors. What I would suggest you to do is just like pause the task, take a walk, come back and try again. What I do not want you to do is to use any outside LLMs or any place on the internet to, or any unfair means to complete your task for you. See, if you're caught using any outside LLM, we will not only remove you from this particular project, you'll also get a particular tag. So in Outlier, we have something called as tags, which is assigned to like every profile. So we will be assigning you a tag that will prevent you from getting any other projects in the future, which is basically the end of the journey for you at Outlier. So please do not use any outside LLMs whatsoever while you're tasking on the platform. What you can do is the fact that you can exploit the same gap again and again. For example, let's say that you found a gap in the model's knowledge. Maybe you found out that the model is not really good on LangChain of module of Python. So instead of using the same prompt again and again, maybe create different scenarios. Maybe this time you're creating a chatbot to add into a website. Maybe another time you're creating a chatbot uh, to have more knowledge about some RAG operation that that you want to implement. All of them would use the same gap, but when you write these type of prompts, you can be 100% sure that these are prompts that will get you a deviation in the model's response, and you can use the same gap again and again and again n number of times. And I'm not saying that this is a hack that you can use in the Outlier platform. This is something of an actual requirement, because if you have found a very big gap in the model's knowledge, the more data we have on this gap, the better the models are going to train. And the next time they won't have this gap anymore, because you have enough data that the entire gap can be filled up. So this is the reason why uh, if you like, I would recommend you to write down all of the gaps in the model's knowledge that you find, and after, let's say, a couple of 5 6 tasks, you'll have a list of maybe 5 to 6 gaps in the model's knowledge. Then you can reuse again and again and again, and eventually make really high quality tasks. And after you found a gap, your focus would then shift to actually creating really good prompts and doing the rest of the task really well, instead of getting frustrated and trying out different trial and error techniques. So I think that would help you out a lot. Uh, so Awesome. Now let's dive into the detailed instructions itself. So let me share my screen and we can dive into this. Right. So these are the instructions for this particular project. I'm going to share this with all of you so you can all go through it. Uh, Please do not spam on the chat. Yes, you will need to fail the model in each and every turn. Going to show you an example. I'm going to show you an actual task that I completed while I was tasking on the Limmer Astrologer like project. And I'll show you what exactly do I mean when I say the minimum number of turns and everything else. Prajwal, don't do that. Uh, if you try to cheat on this particular test, in that way, we have ways of identifying and you will be banned from the platform completely. Cool. So diving down into the important instructions and the task specifications for this project, we have already gone through this entire workflow. There's a couple of things that you need to understand. So goal setting, it has to like match the task category, etc. Example goal could be like, build a ping pong game. That's how vague it needs to be. There's like no specifications at all. Just what do you want out of this conversation with the model? Next up is that you want to define a prompt. A prompt has to match a task category, a programming language. It has to reflect a difficulty level. So the four things that I talked about was the task category, the programming language, difficulty level, and minimum number of turns. These are the four requirements of a particular task. A prompt has to follow these three requirements, which is the task category, programming language, and difficulty level. So you have to design a prompt in this. Of course, you can only use English in this project. We have projects where you are asked to write Hindi prompts, maybe Hindi language in Hindi Latin or Devanagari or even Bengali prompts or any Marathi or Gujarati or anything like that. So, by the way, avoid low effort prompts, single sentence prompts, or incredibly generic prompts without any constraints. That includes your DSA questions, your competitive programming questions. All of those are a strict no no. We need prompts that an actual developer will ask the model to do. An actual developer will never ask a competitive programming question unless they're using that to like pass a particular round of interview or something like that. But again, that is not something that is our focus in this particular project. So don't ask these types of questions. A couple of special notes here on what the prompt should and should not have. Prompts should not have what we call as counting prompts. You cannot create counting prompts. So counting prompts mean, okay, there was this very famous meme, and I think all of you might have heard of it, that ChatGPT, till very recently, currently they've fixed it, but till very recently, ChatGPT was unable to answer this very simple question about how many R's are there in strawberry. So imagine a model that can like create entire code bases out of a single prompt is unable to answer a question which maybe 2-year-old or a 3-year-old would be able to answer. So how is that happening? Why is ChatGPT not able to answer such type of questions? The reason actually lies in the way that the infrastructure is defined in these models, which makes counting actually beyond the scope of improvement for these models. These models cannot have a count of what they're generating. And it is, if you want to dive, if you want me to take a deep dive, it's actually because of the tokenization. So for example, this counting word itself, like, by the way, tokenization is like whenever you write a prompt, it is broken down into smaller pieces and then it is supplied to the model. And these pieces might not actually look like your regular words. If you're supplying this entire paragraph to the model, your pieces would not be each and every word in specifically. It could be, for example, for this word counting, it could be divided into multiple pieces. It could be divided into count and ing, for example. And this could then be supplied to the model. So this actually prevents the model from answering any of these type of counting types of things, which is why this is beyond the scope of improvement, and hence you cannot fail the model on its counting abilities. So any prompts that refer to do something or do write this code in under 10 lines, or do something in n number of steps, or comment on every second line of code, that too, that is a counting prompt, and you're failing the model based on a counting disability, and that is not allowed. Your prompts should avoid asking the model from topics such as mathematics, physics, etc. I've honestly seen people use really complex physics problems, maybe problems they saw on Big Bang Theory or something, some of that show, and they've asked the model. The model like creates a good code, but it turns out that the formula that they're using was incorrect. In that case, like, this is a coding project, we want to test the model's coding abilities, not its abilities to be very good with maths and physics concepts. So that is why these type of prompts are also not allowed. And that's pretty much it. That's all the requirements there are for a particular prompt. It has to be very objective, it has to be very clear, it has to have a particular difficulty level, it has to match a task category, and you cannot use any DSA type problems. You cannot use any counting prompts. You cannot ask anything on such as math or physics, etc. It has to be a coding related prompt. Yeah. Next up, we have the task categories. So now again, this is something that is really important, but we are going to like some part of it. Some of these task categories are very basic, pretty much self-explanatory. So let's dive directly into it, and we're going to cover some of these categories in under 1 minute from now. So the first category that we have is generation slash synthesis. So this particular task category is basically when you provide the model with a bunch of requirements that I want to create a website. It has to have like these requirements. I want to create a portfolio website with my photo at the left side, my social media links at the right side, and at the bottom right there will be this option, something like that. When we do this, you are providing the model some raw requirements, and the model creates a code from scratch and then provides you that code. That is generation slash synthesis. There is no code required in the prompt. So you see here, there's going to be options where there's going to be yes. So in this case, this is very basic, very simple. Next up, we have editing, rewriting. This is where you provide the model with a piece of code that you have written, and yes, you have to provide the model with that code, and the code should work properly. It should not have a bug in that particular code. So, editing and rewriting is a category where you provide the model a piece of code that you have written, and then you ask the model to make changes to that code, or rewrite that code, add features to that code, anything where the model needs to understand what you have written and then edit that piece of code in order to make or in order to answer your particular prompt. That is where we call as editing or rewriting. That is the task category that we are referring to. Third up, we have debugging, which is basically you providing a faulty piece of code to the model. So you provide the model with a piece of code that must contain a bug, and then you ask the model to identify and correct any existing errors in the particular code. So this is a code debugging task. Next up, we have code documentation. Now, these are the three categories that a lot of people get confused on, and so I'm going to please pay very close attention to these. Just a hint: these categories might be asked in the test that you are about to give after this session. So, code documentation is a category where the model needs to analyze the code that you have provided, and for that you need to provide a code to the model. The model needs to analyze the code that you have provided, just go over that and present to you what is already inside the code itself. So this includes, commenting on the code, any code based documentation, any API documentation, example usages of a particular function, documenting a function. All of these come under the category of documentation, where the model is not doing anything new per se. It is just going over what you have written and telling you about what you have written. That's it. Review and critique is where you provide the code to the model, and yes, the code should work properly here also and here also. So you provide a code to the model, and then the model analyzes that code thoroughly and then suggests you on what you can do to maybe make it better. Or for example, review clash slash critique could be give me the time complexity of my code, or how is my code, are there any security vulnerabilities in my code, etc., etc. These could be review slash critique prompts where you are asking the model to review a piece of code, and then you are expecting the model to just tell you what what changes should you make. Now there's one very big caveat here, and this is something that you need to understand in this particular category. The expectation here from the model is not that it will actually fix the code and then provide it to you. If it does, that's fine. For example, if I ask Suresh here that, hey Suresh, what is wrong with me? In that case, I do not expect Suresh to actually fix me. If he does try to fix me, that's fine. It is his kind heartedness. But my expectation when I'm asking this question is that Suresh will just tell me what is wrong with me. So this is the reason why that explains, like, coming back into the coding part of it. So in coding, for example, if you're asking what are the security issues in my code, there are going to be cases where the model actually tells you, okay, your code has these issues, and here is your corrected code with all of these issues fixed. That's fine. And but remember, if let's say response A gives you this type of code and there's response B which just tells you that, okay, these are the issues with your code, you cannot mark response B as having incorrect. You cannot mark it as a deviation. Of course, this one is better than response B, but just telling you what is there in the code or issues that are there in the code without actually fixing that does not make response B incorrect or cause a deviation. This is the difference between review, critique, and documentation. Are you able to get this part between these two? What is the difference? Just thumbs up means yes, thumbs down means no. Okay. Okay, some people are asking again. Okay, cool. So documentation is whenever you give a particular piece of code to the model, and then you are expecting the model to document that. Whatever that is written in that particular code, you want the model to tell what is written, or maybe comment on the code, or create some API documentation, document any particular function. That is code documentation. Code review slash critique is where you ask the model to analyze your code and provide analysis or some code review on it. And your your objective here in these types of queries is not to make sure that the model fixes the code. It's just to make sure that the model tells you what is wrong with your code. That is the objective here. And the final category that we have, guys, is a category called code ecosystem. Now, this category has a lot of stories. This category is the like one of those categories where anytime a person in the limber astrologer task would get this category, most of them would actually skip it. But for the very few people who actually understood what we need in this type of category, for them it was a piece of cake. They would complete a task which was supposed to be for like 1.5 hours in under 30 minutes, and they would then submit the task because it is that easy. But for some people, it was they were not able to get what exactly this category means. So please be very aware of this, like of this section of this code ecosystem category that I'm about to tell you. Code ecosystem is a category where, for example, if I'm asking the model that, hey, I have could you create a code that would automatically generate an entire blog post for me using any local LLMs, and the model creates a code. So this type of code is actually code generation because I provide a bunch of raw requirements, and then the model creates a code to fulfill those requirements. That is code generation. If I wanted to convert that into code ecosystem, what I would need to add is the fact that maybe I tell the model, hey, I have a Mac OS, I have a Mac OS, this operating system, this version. Can you create that same code, say with the same requirements, and also tell me how I can automatically schedule this piece of code to run every day at 9 a.m.? When I do that, I'm sort of adding another dimension to the code where the code now has to, like, the model not only has to generate this piece of code, it also has to provide me with a bunch of instructions on how I can schedule this piece of code to run automatically in my computer. This is code ecosystem. Anyways, any prompts where you're asking the model for any instructions on specific IDEs, on version control system. So you can ask the model to give you commands on how you can upload a piece of code to GitHub, for example. That is, again, that makes it code ecosystem. But GitHub and all is fine because the model will actually give you the correct instructions and you won't be able to find a deviation here. The best way to find a deviation in this type of category is by using Docker. I don't know if you all know Docker or not. By the way, how many of you know Docker? Have you worked with Dockers before? Docker, Kubernetes? Awesome. Okay, so a lot of you know. I didn't hope that. Honestly, I was not expecting a lot of you to know this. But it's super cool that you know this stuff because I've seen people actually Dockerizing very simple pieces of code. I once saw that someone actually Dockerized a piece of code that just said print hello world, and that was it. They Dockerized this piece of code, and the deviation actually came because the model did not provide the correct instructions to Dockerize something or to Dockerize that piece of code because it provided the incorrect instructions because the Docker version was changed and it was not the latest instruction that they provided. So code ecosystem, you can simply Dockerize any piece of code, or if you're fond of working in some super niche IDs, for example, you can. In my case, I even tried this once, and it actually worked. For code ecosystem, you can see if you're using PyCharm, there is a way in PyCharm to actually visualize any SQL tables that you have created. Like not a lot of people actually go and explore this type of stuff in certain IDs. So you can then ask the model, okay, hey, I'm using PyCharm. I have this piece of code. I've created certain tables in an SQL. Could you, or you can just ask the model, to create an SQL table and provide instructions on how I can visualize these SQL tables if I'm using PyCharm. It is very certain that most of the times the model will actually tell you, okay, go to options, go to this setting and then this setting. And when you try to do that, it actually turns out that this setting never existed. The model is completely hallucinating. And this is where you can actually find a deviation in the model's response. You have to be creative here. You have to find out, certain things. For code ecosystem, your creativity can reach like extremely high stages. And this is really easy task to do. Whenever you get a code ecosystem, that's very easy to get a deviation on. So yeah, those are the task categories that we have. Are all of you like able to get the different types of task categories we have? Have there any doubts? Like thumbs up, yes, thumbs down, no. So I got a query to just like explain in very short. So in under 1 minute, generation synthesis. You provide the model with a bunch of raw requirements. The model writes a code from scratch. That's generation synthesis. When you provide a code to the model and then you ask the model to maybe edit the code or rewrite the code or add features to the code, etc., etc., that comes under editing, rewriting. Debugging is when you provide a faulty piece of code to the model and then you expect the model to fix that piece of code. Documentation is when you provide a piece of code to the model, then you expect the model to document that piece of code, maybe add comments to the code, document a particular function, generate some API documentation, etc., etc. That is documentation. In review slash critique, you provide the piece of code to the model and then you ask the model to analyze that piece of code, tell maybe what is the time complexity of the code, what is wrong with the code, what is the code following proper guidelines and standards and best practices, etc. Code ecosystem is where you provide when you ask a model to create a piece of code and also provide you instructions which are outside of the code but related to the environment that the code is present in. That is basically code ecosystem. That is basically all of the categories that we have. So now next up. Okay, so we have we are going to very quickly cover the difficulty level. And the first question that you might have after seeing difficulty level is the fact that isn't difficulty level very subjective in nature? You know, something that maybe Deva Nigam finds very easy to do, I might actually find it very hard to do. And something that Sheikh here finds challenger, it might be just, a medium for me. So how do you actually define what difficulty a prompt is? So this is where this table will come in handy because we have tried to objectify this. And I'm going to very quickly explain what is medium, hard, and challenger. So a medium difficulty is where, imagine this very vaguely. If a first year student in computer science with a very limited knowledge of programming and a very limited knowledge of some of the very basic and most common libraries, like just like NumPy, Pandas, etc. Like, but not very detailed knowledge of these libraries, but very basic implementations of these libraries. If that person is able to come or to solve that particular prompt, or if that person has the knowledge that is required to solve that particular prompt, in that case it comes under a medium level query. A hard level prompt is basically when you require knowledge of data structures, algorithms, uncommon libraries, or uncommon implementations of common libraries. By the way, like the NumPy and Pandas libraries that you and I are aware of, like those libraries are really, really vast in nature. Like we don't even know like certain implementations of those libraries, but if you actually go down and discover each and every function they have, it's going to go like these functions which are specifically designed to do a very niche type of task, which is something which is a knowledge that not a lot of people will have. So in that case, that again becomes a hard level query. If you have to use a library that is really uncommon, maybe something specific to the task that you're doing, maybe LangChain or any other thing. Maybe you're using the Olama library, or you're using any specific library which is not very common. In that case, that again makes it a hard level prompt. If you're using knowledge of data structures, additional algorithms, etc., that again makes it a hard level. Challenger level is then completely different. In a challenger level, you basically need extreme domain specific information. It has to come from, or you like either need an extreme domain specific information, knowledge, or you need substantial API or code context. For example, if I ask the model, hey, can you use the Skyscanner API? Skyscanner is a website where which you can compare like the cheapest flight prices on. So if I ask the model, hey, can you use the Skyscanner API to give me the flight path between two places with exactly two layovers in between them? For example, if this is my query, just imagine the level of knowledge that is required to actually create a successful code or an accurate code to answer that query. Just like firstly, the model would need to know what is the latest version of that API, what are the methods in that API, what are the data that what are the inputs in those specific methods inside of that API, what is the output that we are going to get. After getting the output, how do you actually store the output, in which data structure do you store the output, and after doing all of that, how do you then use that entire data to actually solve the question that was asked in the first place. This is something that you need to be aware of. So challenger level queries are extremely domain specific. Uh, Next up, so this is the knowledge required part. We also have prompt ambiguity. So prompt ambiguity is basically how much are you allowing the model to think. In medium level queries, you don't allow the model to think on their own. So you just give the model a certain, like everything that the model needs to know, you provide it in the prompt itself. You provide in the prompt which data structure needs to be used, which type of algorithm you need to be used, all of these things. So there's not a lot of ambiguity there. In medium level prompts, now this is where you'll actually understand this ambiguity part very clearly. In medium level prompts, you allowed the model to think some things on their own. For example, if I'm asking the model, hey, I want you to extract this data from this server and create a query that could find an exact point in that entire data. So my end objective is very clear. I'm not like, I'm not introducing vagueness in what I want the model to do. My end objective is very clear, but the model now needs to decide on its own that whenever it is extracting this data, which data structure would it store it in? Will it store it in queue data structure or a list data structure or a dictionary or whatever? So it needs to decide on its own which will be an optimal data structure to store this type of data into. And then it would automatically need to decide which algorithm to use to actually find a particular data point in that data. So this is something where you're allowing the model to decide certain things on its own. And for hard level prompts, then like for challenger level, sorry, for challenger level prompts, you basically then have to solve a lot of different sub problems in order to come up with an ideal solution. Imagine the Skyscanner API question. Like in order to do that, in order to reach a final correct answer, you would actually need to solve like a lot of smaller problems, and only when you solve all of them correctly will you actually reach a correct final answer. If any one of them is wrong, your entire final answer is wrong. Guys, I'll have to take away your chatting abilities. So I saw that there's a lot of spam going on in the chat, so I'll enable it as soon as I can. Cool. We have spent a lot of time here. So next up, all I want to do is just discuss like solution complexity, easy, medium, hard. That's basically it. Next up is the prompt example. Now there's three examples here, but I'm not going to go over all of these three examples. To save time, I'm going to just tell you what this example is, and then I'm going to convert that into a hard, and then I'm going to convert that into a challenger level. So you have a better understanding of what exactly is a prompt of a medium, hard, and challenge level. So in this particular case, this prompt asks the user that, okay, hey, I want a website. First of all, they tell that I have data that looks like this. So in this data, they have on audio file paths. So this MIDI file path is basically audio file path. So they have certain files, audio files stored in some particular place in this type of data. So they want to create a React website where each of these song will have will be listed here, and there'll be a play button next to that song, and they'll do that for all of the songs here. And whenever they click that play button, the song should actually play. That's pretty much it. That's basically it. Now, the knowledge required to actually complete this task is not a lot. It is a medium level task. There is it can be done by like a first year student who knows just like basic React. There's not a lot of ambiguity. You're not allowing the model to think a lot on its own, so that's fine. This is a medium level prompt. If I had to convert this into a hard level prompt, what I could ask the model to do is to maybe, let's say you already have some audio files stored somewhere. I can ask the model to maybe convert some of these audio files into a binary format, maybe add some noise to those audio files, merge more than one audio files together, and then create the same website where I can play the merged files, something like that. So now the knowledge required to actually successfully create a code that does all of that is now significantly higher. So in this case, this becomes a hard level prompt. If I wanted to convert that into a challenger level prompt, I could ask, instead of using my own audio files, I could ask to maybe use the Spotify API, for example. Or since I already have the noise and everything added, I can ask the model to maybe train a transformer neural network or any other like AI model to automatically detect these noise samples and then remove them from the audio files itself. So I can do that. So when I do that, the knowledge then is then required to successfully create a code that follows all of my requirements is then astronomically high. So this again becomes a part of a challenger level prompt. So I hope you're all able to understand this part. So give me a thumbs up if you're able to understand the difficulty, thumbs down if you're not. And okay, awesome. Out of the 830 people, 40, 50 people have understood. Cool. Okay, someone did not. I'll get to the questions after going through the session. So at the end, so we have an entire Q&A section of our webinar where you can ask the questions, but not related to your accounts or EQ issues, right? Because I can only give you my condolences, but I won't be able to actually help you resolve your issues. So next up, by the way, I'm opening the chat section again, but please do not spam this time. If you spam this time, I'll just simply remove you from the meeting. So don't spam. Uh, okay. Next up, I'm going to explain to you, and this is the last part. Okay. Like we have gone through like the two major stuff. This is the last one. After that, it's basically the end of the session. See, we started out at 6:30. It's 7:30, so technically been 1 hour. Just stay with me for like half an hour more, and we're going to cover up the entire session, and I can then brief you about the test, and we can go over Q&As if there are any. Cool. So there are some 5 categories on which you need to individually rate a particular response. These categories are instruction following, accuracy, optimality, efficiency, up-to-datedness, and presentation. So these 5 categories, let me explain you very quickly what these are. Instruction following is just what it says. Is the model actually following the instructions? However accurately it is following, that is completely different. Accuracy is whatever the model is doing, how accurate is it? Optimality and efficiency is the code that the model is producing. Is it actually optimal? What is the time complexity of that code? Is it the most optimal code that the model could have produced? That is optimality and efficiency. Up to datedness is whatever code that the model is producing. Is it up to date? Is it using the up to date implementation and the latest library version and the latest methods in that particular library? So that comes under up to date. And presentation is basically whatever the model response is, how well is it presented to the user? How much is the user able to understand from that particular response? For example, if the model just gives you a code with no comments and no description around the code, the end user won't be able to understand what just happened. In that case, that would come under presentation issue. The code might be correct and everything, so that still remains the same. And also there is one very important thing here. If you have not been paying attention till this point in this session, I would recommend you to please give attention to this particular part, because I'm going to cover possibly the most important section from the perspective of what will be asked in your test, and also for this project and any other projects that you do in coding at Outlier. Their names might be different, but the concept remains the same. So I'm going to go over a story time, by the way. I'm going to tell you what is the difference between instruction following and accuracy. This is a concept that a lot of people have doubts on. So now is like a story time. So for all of you, I know you're super bored out of your minds, and that's why let's go over this story. So this is me, by the way, and this is my little brother. So as all good big brothers, we cannot let our siblings be happy at any point in their lives. That's just like morally wrong. So one day I saw that, my little brother was sitting in his room. He was really happy. So I asked him to go bring me a banana. He was unhappy, but he knows that he can't defeat me. So there's no option, but he says, okay. So now my little brother, he goes to the market, and then he comes back to me, and he actually gives me these two things. He gets me a banana, he also got me an apple. So in this case, did he follow my instructions? Like, if you want to answer, just like give me a thumbs up if for yes, thumbs down for no, or okay, we have people saying no, we have people saying yes. Okay, now this is the core reason of this story. See, I asked him to get me a banana. He did get me a banana. He also got me an apple. That's different. Maybe he got me an apple out of his own love for me, although that is very like unlikely. But he did follow my instructions. He did get me what I asked him to do. So this is instruction following. Now, as again, he got me a banana and an apple, and he was again sitting in his room very happily playing in his stupid phone. So I could not see him happy. So I asked him to get me a peeled banana this time. He was unhappy, but again, he has no option. So remember, like I asked him to get me a peeled banana. So from this point, what happens is that we have a disturbance in the time space continuum, and we actually have a multiverse of madness thing that goes on from this point. So there's two parallel universes. In one of the parallel universe, my brother comes up to me and he says, "Here is your peeled up banana." And then when I look at what he's got me, it's actually banana cut up into different slices. So in this case, is it accuracy or instruction following? Okay, someone says instruction. Okay, both. It can't be both, by the way. So the thing is, each and every category that we discussed is mutually exclusive. That means that if one issue is there, it can only belong to one category, not more than one category. Okay, so that is why we have a lot of confusion going on. I see more people saying instruction following, and we have like almost equal people saying accuracy as well. So in this particular case, it is actually an accuracy issue, not an instruction following issue. Let me tell you why. Imagine if this happens to you. Your brother is saying that he peeled up the banana. So in his small mind, he thinks that what he did was actually peeling up the banana. So he thinks this is what peeling up looks like. He was in his mind following the things that I said, but when I see what is happening inside of me in this particular situation, I know that he does not know what peeling up looks like because he stated that he peeled up the banana. That is why this here is an accuracy issue. Now compare that with another multiverse thing that happened. So again, the same thing. He cut up the banana instead of peeling it up. And this time he just told me that here is what you asked for. Now this time, what is the issue here? Is it accuracy or is it instruction following this time? IF. Okay, again, someone says both. It can't be both. One issue cannot be in more than one category. Yes. In this case, it is an instruction following issue. Because as soon as this happened, the first thing that goes into my mind is that did you even listen to me correctly when I asked that I wanted a peeled banana instead of cut up banana? So in this case, it is actually an instruction following. Maybe my brother actually, while going into the kitchen, he forgot what I asked him to do, and he just knows that it had to do something with a banana, and he just like cut it up into different slices and presented that to me. So he forgot what I asked him to do, and this is actually an instruction following issue. So similarly, what happens is that coming back to a coding perspective, if the model says it has done something and it has not done it, that is an accuracy issue. But if the model did not say it has done something and also does not do it, that is an instruction following issue because the model maybe forgot what you asked it to do. Maybe you gave it like say 10, 15 specification, and this is a valid example, by the way. Like if you provide the model with 15, 20 specifications on what you want, it is very likely that the model will not follow one or two of them. It will forget what you asked it to do, and that way you can get a deviation in the model's response. So this is again, and again, one more example could be, for example, if I ask the model, and now this is something that you all would need to answer. If I ask the model to create a website with a yellow background, and then the model gave me the answer that here's the website with a yellow background, but it turns out when I look the website and when I render the website, the background is not actually yellow, it is orange. So in this case, is it an accuracy or okay? So a lot of you, before I even completed the answer, okay, you were typing accuracy. Yes, it is accuracy issue. But if the model had not stated the fact, and the model just said, okay, here's the code that you asked for, and then it was an orange website, that would have been an instruction following issue. So I hope this part is now clear to all of you. In different projects, see, the same thing will have different name. Accuracy can have different names such as truthfulness, etc. Instruction following can have a different name, but the concept that you understand here remains exactly the same. Whenever the model says it has done something and does not do it, that becomes an accuracy issue. Awesome. Coming back from our story time. So we have gone through all of these different types of categories that are there in this project. Next up is like, what is a major issue and a minor issue? But before that, see, like, remember when I told you that there needs to be a failure in the model response? The failure is valid if it is only in the first four categories. If the only issue in the model response is in a presentation issue, that actually does not count for a failure. You only need to have failures in the first four categories. And these tend to change around a lot, by the way. Like in the Lemur astrologer project, initially, what only a failure would only be considered if the issue was in these two categories only. And that too was a major issue, not even a minor issue. Like if there is a major issue in these two categories, that is only that is the only case where it will actually be considered for a failure. But over time, they actually increase that so that now a minor issue in any one of these categories is now considered for a failure. And in our project as well, the project that we are doing, which is based out of that project, in our project also, this remains the same. A minor issue in any one of these four categories is considered for a deviation in the model response. Now, very quickly, since we have already gone through this entire uh, all of these categories, I'm going to very quickly cover what is a minor issue and major issue. So for instruction following, if you provided, let's say, 12 requirements and it forgot two of them, but it did complete the 10 that or 10 that out of the 12 that you provided, in that case, like, it is fulfilling the primary request, but it fails to adhere to some of the constraints, which is why it is a minor issue. But if it fails to fulfill the primary request, for example, if you ask the model to create a website, an actual complete website, but the model only gave you the backend code or the front end code only and not the entire code. So if it failed to fulfill the primary request itself, which is why this is a major issue in instruction following. A minor issue in accuracy is just the same thing, that the yellow background thing that we discussed. So if the model states that it is using yellow background, but the background is actually orange, this is a minor issue in accuracy. A major issue in accuracy is basically any time that the code does not work. Any time that the code results in an error, that is an accuracy issue. Optimality may minor issue is what if, let's say, the model could have produced a code that was of complexity maybe log n, but the model created a code that was had complexity of n log n. So not a large difference, but still, like, it's not the most optimal code that could have been produced. So in that case, it is a minor issue. A major issue could be when the most optimal code could have had a complexity of log n, but the model chose to produce maybe a code that has a time complexity n cube, for example. In that case, it is a major issue with optimality. Minor issue with presentation is using camel case, snake case inconsistently, or using same variable names, or etc. Those are very minor issues with presentations. A major issue is when the code is lacking comments entirely. There's very poor formatting of the response. There's no structure to the response. It is very unclear. The variable names and function names are very unclear. The logic is very disorganized. Like, ultimately, whatever affects the user understanding the most, if as a user it takes you a lot of your energy to understand what the model is responding you with, that comes under a major issue in presentation. Otherwise, it's a minor issue. So final category is up to date. Now this is, again, there's a very small caveat here. So up to date, if the model provides you a code which either results in a deprecation warning or an error entirely. So if the code fails or gives you an error, this does not go into accuracy because the model is not giving you an error. If the code is giving you an error because of the use of out of date libraries, in that case, it is actually an out of date error instead of an accuracy error. Or otherwise, if it's just giving you deprecation warning. So people who might have worked with, ML codes, a lot of times you get deprecation warnings, and we just tend to ignore those warnings. But as an AI model, you would actually need to produce like a really good code. So that is where, your deprecation warnings would actually matter a lot. So you can mark that under out of date code, and then you can like simply submit the task because this is a valid deviation. If the code that the model is producing is out of date, that's a valid deviation. So you've gone through all of these. Everything else is pretty standard from this point. There's just like one last thing, very small, very simple. So remember when I told you that you need to choose with a preferred response. So you need to choose which one of the responses is better. You can actually choose it from a scale of these four categories. So a negligibly better is when you have two responses which are sort of equivalent. Of course, like some issues are more important than others, in which case let's say if one response has three issues where one of them is in presentation, one of them is in optimality, and one of them is in so in that case, of course, this one is better because this has issues in less important categories. In that case, you can choose which one is better based on very negligible things that, as I mentioned, the descriptiveness of the comments, the is the answer in bullet points in one and not in bullet points in the other. You can use any of these very small and negligible things to choose which one is better. In this case, it will actually be negligibly better. Slightly better can be in cases where uh, the difference is there, but it is very small. So one response is three, one response is two. Of course, the two one is better, but the difference is not that high. So in this case, this is slightly better. Better is when the difference is slightly larger, but the first response itself, or in this case, the response one itself, is not perfect. So in this case, let's say response one has one issues, response two has maybe three issues. So of course, like we can clearly see that response one is better, but response one itself is not perfect. And much better is in when like one of the responses is absolutely perfect with zero issues and the other one is like absolutely garbage with four issues or three issues or whatever. Or maybe the gap is really high. So one issue here and maybe five issues or four issues here. So in this case, it is much better than the other one. So this is the last of our instruction guidelines that we needed to go over. Next up, I'm just going to show you like a couple of examples. And this is really important because in your test, you will be asked to create a prompt based on certain requirements and certain task categories, certain difficulty level. So you need to know what type of prompts are we looking for? What does good prompts look like? So let me show you what exactly do I mean by that. I'm going to go over some of the cases that I completed. I'm going to show you some examples from that. So here you go. So I completed these prompts. So let me go over some of them. Uh, let's go over this one. So see here, as soon as you start a task, you get a programming language that you need to work on. My case, it was SQL. You need a difficulty level, which is hard here. You need a minimum number of turns. So minimum, I needed to do two turns. So I needed to write two prompts, which would cause a deviation in the model. And the second prompt had to be related to the first one. So my first turn category was actually code generation and synthesis. From the second turn, I can use any difficulty level, any category, anything that I want. But for the first term, I have to use the difficulty level. I have to use this category for the first turn itself. So I want to show you the prompt that I wrote. So by the way, this is an actual cafe in Mumbai. So I imagine myself as the owner of this cafe, which is a real cafe. You can go there. It's like a pet cafe with a lot of dogs and everything. Really good environment. If anyone of you is in Mumbai, do check this out. Not that they're sponsoring me or anything. It's genuinely good. So there's this cafe called Oh My Dog, which also is a vet clinic and a pet supply store, and then also like it's a cafe altogether. So there's this all of things that are happening here. So this is the type of prompts that we want you to do. Like you won't be able to get this type of things when you're using an LLMs. We want you to think of super you'll guarantee yourself that you will get a really good rating on this type of projects. Also, one very important thing that I want to show you here is the fact that, see, as you're writing the prompt, it has to be very objective, right? And since this is SQL, so if all of you know, SQL is very environment specific, and a code that works in MySQL will not work in, Oracle SQL or PostgreSQL or Dolt SQL. There's like 50 different types of environments, all with their own keywords and on with their own meanings and everything. So each and every type of SQL code is very specific to the environment that is being used in. But since if I don't provide the environment in the prompt, that will make my prompt very subjective. The model might produce code of MySQL and I'll test it in Oracle SQL and then I'll complain that the code is not working. I didn't specify that I was using Oracle SQL or SQLite, for example. So I have to specify that. I cannot not specify that. But the thing is, if I write in the prompt that environment colon sort of SQLite, for example, if I write this, it is very likely that the model will actually remember this. See, AI is not magic, right? It's all a game of probabilities. So when I do something like this, I'm actually giving a lot of focus and attention on this particular part in the prompt. And there is very high chances that the model will remember this and create a code that is working on SQLite. So how do you provide this information without actually providing this information, or while making sure that this is not easily remembered by the model? So the thing is that you bake it into a sentence. So I wrote this sentence. See here. Recently, we shifted out our operations online, and my 16-year-old son created some database for our business on something called as SQLite. The first part of this sentence is so irrelevant to the problem with so many irrelevant information that the model will actually consider this entire sentence as irrelevant. Although I am providing the thing, I am providing the environment that the model needs to use, it is very likely, or not very likely, I would say it is less likely to remember this compared to if I just type that environment colon SQLite, for example. If I had written this, the model would have absolutely remembered it because I'm specifying this, and like there's no additional information and it is very focused information that I'm writing to the model. By the way, my overall strategy here was the test, like, let's if I provide, let's say, 20 tables to the model, each table with its own set of complexities. When one table is connected to the other table with some foreign key or some additional key, and then that table is connected to another table, and that table is connected to another table. And there's like super complex 20 table structures. And then when I ask the model to maybe create a query that utilizes 4 or 5 of those tables, is the model actually able to do that? Like, spoiler alert, it is. The models are really advanced. But I was able to trick the model using the technique that I showed you. And now let me show you like how did I do that. So I wrote this following prompt with a bunch of requirements. So initially I only had like 3 of them, but I was not able to get a deviation and I kept on adding more and more and more requirements. But it turns out that ultimately what I had to do was to remove that environment colon part. And when I baked it into a sentence, I was able to get a deviation. So I technically didn't need to add any more than 3, but that's something that I already done that. So you can, I didn't want to do it again. I'm very lazy in that way. So the model gave me two responses. So these are the two responses that I got. And it turns out, see this part. So there was an issue with the model response where, see, you have to describe like what is the issue that is there. So you see, the model actually end up using a function called as group contact, which is used in MySQL, not in SQLite. This is an issue with the model response that I got. This is because of the fact that I had to specify that in the within the prompt itself. So like I won't go over the entire UI of the prompt. This of course this is not like an actual project that we'll be working on. This is just a test project to test your understanding of this, so you can see if you are good enough for a pod. So certain other examples that I want to show you are just of the prompt itself. You can be as innovative and creative as you want. Discover things on your own. I once discovered that there's something called as Dolt SQL, which is very niche. So just anything that lot of people don't know, the model will also not know, because there would be very less data about it on the internet. That is something that you can absolutely exploit. I have personally used uh very uncommon libraries. There's a hack even that you just go to PyPy, which is like a library sort of not which is library database. So anything that you do from pip, anything that you install from pip install is actually coming from this PyPy website. You go there, type any random word that comes to your mind, and then there would be a library on PyPy about that. Use that library, create a prompt around that library, because not a lot of people will actually, like, there's not a lot of data available on the internet to use that library, so the model will also not know, but that is something that is used. Similarly, I also found out that there is a library called numpypy. This is again very interesting. The library is named numpypy. When you use this type of library, the model will get confused that it is numpy and actually not numpypy. So you can use this type of things. I have like a lot of these small hacks that I did, that I used when I was completing this project. So for the prompts, by the way, like, be as creative. My name is Champaklala. I wrote this code a couple of days ago. That's all. Like one time I was watching Big Bang Theory, which is a web series, and my prompt would be, hi, my name is Leonard Hofstadter. I'm an experimental physicist, Caltech. If I was watching The Office that week, my prompt would be, my name is Michael Scott. I've started my own paper company. If I was watching the series Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is one of my favorites, so I would write that I'm a police captain or something like that. So this is the type of prompts that you could write. This will actually show that you are creative in a way that we can, like, these prompts are actually really good. By the way, just to let you know, the in the test, the prompt that you'll be writing, I've evaluated like hundreds upon hundreds of these assessment. If you ask the chat GPT, we know that it will give you like certain types of prompts only, maybe certain inventory management system, bank management system, all of these. I immediately know that these prompts are AI generated, and in that case you will be marked for that and you won't be selected into a pod. And also, if we catch you using AI in the test itself, we will send your profile for a thorough audit, and we will be removing you from any projects that you're currently working on, and will be banning you from the platform itself. So if you're attempting the test, please make sure that you're not using any AI models. By the way, also to let you know, we have created the test in a way where we have tested the questions out on the paid versions of ChatGPT, the Claude model, as well as the Gemini advanced model, the Gemini Flash 2.0. And all of these models were not able to answer the question correctly. So that's one of the reasons uh, why using an LLM will actually not work out for you. So you'll actually be more confused if you use an LLM, and you'll get the questions wrong if you use an LLM. If you other like compared to if you had just understood the material and did the test on your own. So just a simple warning. Now, since it's already 8 o'clock, I promised you that I'll complete it in 1.5 hours, and we have completed that. So going back to our presentation here. Okay, this is the Canva only. 1 second. Sorry, this is a lot of. Okay. Oh, this is the one. I think so. Cool. Uh, so couple of things here. I will be releasing the test right now. So I'll show you a QR code which will have the test link. You all can keep that QR code with you and like at least fill it out before 12 a.m. today. That is technically tomorrow, but tonight 12. We have to fill that out before that time. Do not copy the prompts from your friends as well. I have a similarity checker, and just to let you know, I'm super into coding. I've created like all of these similarity checkers, which also works if you have paraphrased the prompt, which also works if you have used an AI. So I will be able to identify that you have cheated in this test. And if I do, if you are identified as such, we'll be removing you from the project and not consider you for a pod membership. So I'll release the test today, and the test will actually give you 3 questions, uh, all based on certain tasks that are already given on the platform. Task as in like not platform, sorry, for this project. So we'll provide you with a prompt. You'll have model responses to judge. And the only thing that you'll need to answer there is the fact that if an issue is there or not. And if it is there, is it an instruction following or an accuracy issue? Or are there more than one issues where one of them corresponds to an instruction following, one of them corresponds to an accuracy? Instruction following and accuracy are the only 2 things that we are going to judge you on, but it's not going to be an easy test because, of course, we want the bar to be a bit high. But if you have understood the material so far, I'm going to tell you that there's going to be it's not going to be that difficult for you. Ideally, you should be able to complete the test within the 1.5 hours itself. I've seen people completing it within 1 hour. If you have understood the materials correctly, you would be able to do that. But like maximum it's going to take you is like 2 hours, more not more than that. So with that note, let me show you the QR for the quiz, and then you can scan that. And just let me know if this is working also. So this is the QR code for the quiz. If you could scan that and let me know if it's working. Awesome. Cool. So this, I'm also going to share the link for this in the chat section itself, so that you can all uh, take a note of this one in group chat. Test link. There you go. The instruction document. Yes, I'm going to share you the instruction document as well. And this one. This is the instruction document. Go through this instruction document. It has more than what you need to pass this test. But if you have paid attention, I think the knowledge that I've shared you is enough. So before you leave, by the way, there's an end attendance form. So this is the end attendance form. Please fill this out before you leave. And there's a couple of things that I need to share with you. See, if you are selected into a pod, and even if you're not, in both the cases, I request you to please make sure that the quality of the task that you perform at Outlier displays the best of your abilities. It displays that you are not here just for uh, earning quick bucks. You are here to stay for the long run. And with that, you are willing to dedicate the level of quality that is required for a particular task to have. This is a really good platform if you genuinely want to create a career in it. You know, people are earning a lot on the platform. And the thing is, they maintain a really high quality standard. The issue is, if you do not maintain that quality, it makes our job hard because see, all of these projects are not based out in India. They're all based out in the US or in different other countries, mostly in the Western Hemisphere. And we have to sort of pitch Indian contributors in front of these project leads to make sure that we get more and more projects into India, and we get more work for Indian contributors to do. And that only happens when you provide really high quality work. So when you use LLMs or any other unfair means to do your task, not only are you hampering your own profile, you're also hampering the image of the entire Outlier India community, and that is, kind of hurtful to all of the other people who are also dedicatedly working on the platform. So please make sure that anytime that you're doing a task, before you click the submit button, just go through it once. And if you see that you could make it maybe 10% better than it actually is, please put in that extra bit of effort. That will help your profile a lot, because we are auditing thousands of profiles every day to identify what the quality of the quality of the contributors are on the platform. There's an entire team of more than 20 people for auditing profiles on every project, all the India profiles. And if we believe that you are really good at what you do at the platform, we will be inviting you to join pods regardless of what your score is here in this particular test. So that's one thing. And on that note, no, you cannot give the test tomorrow. The deadline to complete the test is by tonight, 12. That is when I'll stop accepting the responses to that test. Yes, you need to run the code. But see, I know some of you might not know Python. So that is why the test is designed in a way that you would not need the knowledge of Python. To run the code, we have provided the link that, okay, go here, paste the code, and then run it. That is something that you will need to do. Yeah, you can run on your own ID. It's Google form. Yeah, we're not proctoring your screen what you're doing. You can do whatever you want as long as your final answer is correct. Yeah, Shiva Mishra, you have it out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please feel free to leave now, Gautam. I know you're super excited to leave. So please feel free to leave.
Yeah, Akshat.
Yeah, Shiva.
Yeah, please tell me one thing. If I pass the quiz or pass the test, what will that make me? An renter or the pod lead?
No, it will make you a pod member.
So, how do you define a pod member? I mean, is it a kind of a group where people work on a project and they get the task reviewed, or they kind of lead a group of people?
So pod member is like you're part of a pod where you dedicatedly give 20 hours on the platform, and we prioritize you for every project that we have on the platform. You
Yeah,
get
right. Thank you.
super attendance reviewers, etc. And you are also incentivized in a different way than the regular contributors. We then actively make sure that if you're good, you never run out of work to do. Awesome. Yeah, Pranay.
If I'm getting selected in this test, will I be removed from my current project?
No, no, you won't be removed from your current project. You might be like after you're initialized into a pod, you might be shifted to a different project based on what your pod is currently working on. But like that won't affect your existing work.
Okay. I do have one more doubt. Like I am a
Mhm.
cloud engineer currently. I do have problems like when I use ChatGPT for my work-related queries. I do get false responses. Most of this task seems to be on Python or coding problems. Is there any project or something related to my queries where we can uh, send the cloud related, like I'm in a AWS cloud engineer, so that kind of stuff.
Python, like I'm assuming since you're a cloud engineer, you might know basic Python, right?
Yeah, like I worked as a Python engineer, Python developer for more than 6 months, but I actually currently shifted to cloud right now. But I see more like opportunity in queries regarding cloud. So
Okay, got it. So the thing is, if you know basic Python, you can sort of integrate it with the cloud stuff that you know. So if you're an expert in cloud, maybe just ask the model to sorry, if you're an AWS guy, right? So maybe you can ask the model create a Python code that fetches some S3 bucket or something like that. So of course, AWS also has their own libraries and everything, right? Which people can use from Python only. You can ask the model that. I think the model will fail, like definitely fail, because that is a level of expertise that only you have. So
uh,
I believe like that will be very useful actually. If you're specialized in very niche things, you'll actually
okay,
be able to fail the model a lot because you have better knowledge than the model on those parts. So like
okay,
connect Python and like use whatever field you want. That's fine.
okay. So like, can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Like actually, for practicing this queries, is there a unpaid platform or something later? Like, I don't want to submit a unquality task. So, is it like, is
Uh,
there any other?
no, there's no unpaid or test platform for these queries. I think that's again like once you submit it, it will actually need to be reviewed by a human reviewer, right? Like
Hmm,
that's
hmm.
something that needs if we are reviewing it, why not do it in an actual task? So
Okay,
again,
so
to become a pod member, it's not like we are going to remove you if you get one task wrong or something like that. Of course, sometimes it happens to all of us. You can get a
hmm,
couple of tasks wrong and bad rating, that's fine. But as long as you are showing signs of improvement and you're not consistently performing bad task, sometimes tasks can have a bad rating just because of bad luck and the reviewer not being in the good mood. Stuff like
okay.
this.
Okay, so if I put a prompt and at last I'm not satisfied with what I did, is it okay for me to skip the task?
Uh, yeah, you can skip it. You can skip the task as many times as you want. That's fine. As
Okay,
long as you get like something that you're comfortable with, you can work on that.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, Deva Nigam.
Yeah, thank you, Ashad. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
No, sounds good. Okay, so I want to ask that I have been like a pod lead for more than two projects. So like, do we like do I get like something some priority related to that? Because as of now, I think my account is having like that tag, which is I was a pod lead in like past. So like something will go for it, or like it's normal.
Like it's open for everyone if you're able to
Uh-huh.
like your audit experience will of course come in handy.
Okay.
So if you're selected as a pod member, then we can make you a pod lead of that particular pod. That is also something that we can do. But for that, like you'll need to firstly clear the quiz and actually become a pod member. Cool, awesome. Shashank, you have it out.
Yeah, hello. Yeah. So I just have a question regarding the task that you showed us earlier.
Haha.
So your task was under the category of code generation, yeah, but your prompt had an SQL query which is end of the day a code, a kind of code, but then how is it relevant?
So the thing is, you don't in generation, you're not required to provide code, and the code that I provide was only for the table defining part. So what are the structures of the table? That was the only part of code. You can if you
Okay.
want to, but you don't have to. That is the difference there. In any other type, let's say in code debugging, you have to provide a code. It won't work if you don't provide a code, right?
Okay, understood. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Shashank. Okay. Yuvraj Adhikari.
Yes, sir. Actually, my doubt isn't regarding this one. Is it okay if I ask a doubt regarding SRT platform?
I'm actually not aware of that.
Okay. Okay, sir. No, actually, I was having this issue about the SRT workplace. I have sent the mail
What
to
exactly?
Outlier team yet. Actually, the password given to me by Outlier is not working on the SRT platform. Even when I reset the password,
Okay.
it is just showing that redirected too many times and it is not working there.
See, I honestly don't know if I didn't even know what SRT is and if there's a platform. It's like different from Outlier. Is that a different company?
No, no, no.
So,
When the detail of our task we get shown on the SRT platform,
oh,
we have to view the details of the conversation over there and rate them in the platform then.
okay, okay. In that case, then like the your best option is then simply to raise a support ticket for that only. Like,
I
I
have
don't.
already raised support ticket 2, 3 times yet they are not providing a proper solution.
Did you try to raise it on discourse?
Yeah, I have contacted QMs multiple times, yet no response from them.
Mm. Then I think you'll have to then wait it out. Otherwise, if you become a pod member,
Actually,
that we can
okay,
sort of help you out with that. There's dedicated support channels for that. But currently, see,
that's
there's
right.
like a lot of volume for these type of errors and these type of issues. That's why maybe it's taking some time for them to respond to that. But I think they will
Yeah,
definitely
it
do.
can be. Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Priyanshu, yes, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Axel. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so actually, I just want to ask before I used to be a pod member, not as exactly just like the pod member. I used to be in the squad, best performing squad or whatever. So it
Mm-hmm.
is that concept is going to be same here also in the pod, just because before we have the same kind of concept where
Yes.
in one group there is going to be I guess 20 members where we have like dedicated QMs and TLs over there to monitor us.
Yes. So
So,
the thing is, the pods that were created earlier, no, those were project specific. So see, the QMs are assigned for a particular project, and then they create certain pods for their own project. This one is different because we are creating these pods to remain indefinitely. So these pods will not dissolve when a project is completed. They will remain the same. They'll just be assigned to different projects, and it will be more like a
mhm.
corporate sort of structure where you just have to work on different projects, but these teams always remain the same as long as like the people in the team are performing well. If of course if you consistently perform poorly, in that case we'll have
Mhm.
to remove people from the pod, and which is fair, right?
Yeah, I got it actually. So here's come my second question actually. So what are the actually benefits we will get to be in the pod? Like, well, it's going to be raise my whatever the task fee. whatever the pay I was getting earlier. So it is going to be increased by
Pod
that.
you get like a slightly higher pay rate, but their pay rate might be higher because they're escalated to reviewers or super attempters. That's one thing. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they do have a higher pay rate overall. They get a lot more
Yeah.
tasks on the platform. They get priority access to the platform. All of the tasks and projects. They as a pod lead who's dedicated to working to solve any of the doubts that you have. For example, if you have doubts related to the documentation of the project and you file like that's confusing, they can actually clarify it from the product team itself. There
Yeah.
is a support channel for all of your account issues.
Okay, that's great. Like actually, I just, so many times I just scratching my head around when I'm doing any task and not getting any feedback for over 2 weeks. It might take long to getting the feedback, so it's sometimes confusing. So that is the reason I just want to ask whether we
Yeah,
will
yeah.
get the periodic feedbacks while doing tasks in the pods.
So in pods, you'll actually like your pod lead will sometimes ask you to show them the task before you actually click the submit button, the sort of a pre-review of the task. So in that way, they can actually monitor that what task is submitting, so they can make sure that it's of a really high quality.
So in the pods, we will get the dedicated war room, kind of like the Zoom meeting and something like that, where
Yeah,
we can be
like
there
every
and
day.
you can,
Yeah.
yeah. So it is just like the same concept, just because I have worked in the data science team. So where there is some kind of dedicated war rooms. So where I have to join there and whenever I'm doing working. So there is always a dedicated QMs there. So they will monitor my tasks. Like if I'm not able to understand, they guide us that time.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much it. Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
thanks. Yeah.
I hope
Proof.
you have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Hi, Akshat.
Hey.
Yeah. So I have actually given this pod exam earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I passed it or what. I don't know. I don't remember my score, but I passed it as I filled the working hours very less, which was less than 10 hours. That's why I didn't got selected that time, or whatever the reason could be. So, do I need to give this again?
If you've already given it, then you don't need to do it.
Yes, but I wasn't assigned to any pod yet that time. And
Oh.
still now I am not in any pod. I have Mighty Moo on my dashboard
Uh-huh.
currently. Yes.
So see, you have now two options. You can either give the test again, but since you've
Yes.
already given, it, we'll be matching it from like your previous response. So
Yes.
in
Yes.
it won't help out your profile. So
That's why.
I suggest
I
you,
guess it will match and then
yeah. So we ultimately we have like one Google sheet where we can identify duplicate entries. So
yes.
that will not help your
Yes.
case.
So what should I do? And I'm not in any pod, so I don't get any task frequently, Uh,
Currently, you're assigned to the Mighty Move project, right? That is the OTS
Yes.
one.
Yes.
So
And I
that,
have been assigned to this project after 2 months,
okay, okay,
a
okay, okay.
constant EQ
What
after
is
a
your
constant EQ of 2 months.
what is your average QMS?
What is that? Can you tell me?
Your rating, quality rating.
Uh, okay, let me check.
For all of the tasks that you have done, if your average is not good, that's one of the reasons why you won't get frequent projects.
Where can I check this?
Just go to your feedback section and just like see for all of the tasks that you have done.
Yes.
Then have
Last, it's showing me Ambassador Cafe, which is the 3 by 5, 3 by 5, and 4 by 5. Okay, okay, and a good rating.
no overall like for all of the tasks. Like
Okay,
you,
wait.
if you go to the all section there, you'll see all the tasks that have feedback, and then you can average them out and then see if it's like below 3.5. I think that's the threshold they mostly use when inducting into a new project.
Wait, let me-
So Ishavar, just for your question, I think is very related. So see, you're getting more projects and based on the quality of your previous projects. That is something that happens internally. So let's say if one project you are getting like rating which is all 4 stars and 5 stars. So your average is of course going to be very high. So even in another project, what they do is like they test before like selecting people. They have to select, let's say, 100 people to be in that particular project. So they choose the top 100 people then.
Okay.
From and that happens when you have a really good feedback and you have a really high scores in the ratings. You make your way to the top n people that they want to select in a particular project. So the better your ratings are, the better your chances are to get more projects in the future.
Okay, so I have to like total it out and divide, no, to get the
Yeah,
average rating. Like yes, so it's
uh,
I guess three tasks which is of five numbers, so 15 in total, and I have got three and four, which is 11, I guess. 10,
mm,
three and four. Yes.
so your average score would be like 5 plus 3 threes. That's 5 and 3. That's 3.5.
Yes.
And you don't have any 1 stars and 2 stars in any of your tasks.
No. No.
Okay, 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 okay. Cool. Then I think what you can do right now, since like you already have a project to work on right now, just make sure that
Yes.
in this you do the best work that you possibly can.
Okay.
When you start getting those 5 stars, like every task that in every task that you do, no, like that is
Yes.
when
But
we identify and we'll mark you as a trusted contributor. Once you
okay.
become a
So
trusted, you then
so
like
later on I can be in any pod.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, man.
No worries. Yeah, Ayush.
Sir, my question was if we fail this pod exam, is there any
Mhm.
effect on our currently working like, task load?
Not if you like fail, that's fine. But the thing is, if you use AI and then we catch you using AI, that is when we'll make your profile go through an audit. And if in that audit it is discovered that you have not been, if you have been using AI in your other previous task as well, so you might get banned from the platform. So
No, means if I am giving the test honestly,
yeah, if you're
I'm
getting it
asking for that
honestly and
scenario.
if you're not able to make it to the what the passing threshold is, that's fine. We won't be like it won't affect any of the things that you're already working on. It's only in cases where we catch people using AI, that's when we mark them as like when that's when we make the teams go do an audit on their profiles thoroughly.
Okay, and the last work I did, I was not able to pass the assessment task,
Uh-huh.
and this was the second time this happened. And after that, I'm not getting any task. It's been a week, I guess. Is it
Okay.
okay or is it a
Yeah,
problem?
that's okay, I think. In any case, if you're not getting a task right now, you'll have to raise a ticket on like, the support
And
chat.
similarly, last month I did not get any task. It was only on 12th of January when I got the task, and then there was no task.
So that again depends on what your average rating was. I think in January
Okay.
we had a lot less projects, and that's why the passing criteria for projects was really high. I've seen product teams select people only which have like more than 4 stars in their previous projects, in the average sort of more than four average in the previous projects, and those were the people who got consistent task in January as well. But again, from like that was because in January a lot of projects that were working were getting delivered to the clients. So a lot of projects came to an end in January because of New Year and all. And from right now, a project requirement and is also like increasing. Yeah, by the way, like if you Sayed and Kilwa, yeah, you can feel free to leave. Like it's already 8:30. If you like wow, that's good. So you can leave. That's fine.
I had one
Cool.
more question. Like you said, the top peoples get more task and all.
Yeah.
the top rated people. So is there any chance that the people who are at the middle of the list will get any opportunities further?
Yeah. Of course you will, but that's again based on the demand that we have, right? Like if let's say you have only one project that requires 10 people and there's total 100 people. Of course you will select the best 10 people to work on that project because you have that. But if it turns out that you have 10 projects, all of which require, let's say, 10 people each, so everyone will get a chance. And then they will get to prove that you can do better, you can perform better in this projects. So that is again that's a game of demand, supply and demand, and how well is your performance overall.
Okay, and yeah, whenever I work, I am currently working on a task, and if I recheck my profile, going to a new tab, there
Hmm.
shows a new project upcoming in my list. So I had a bit confusion about this. Should I accept that project? Means if I accept another project while working on a single project,
Mm-hmm.
so will it cancel the project which I am working on?
वीडियो को लाइक और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलना, ये मैंडेटरी है आप लोगों के लिए। तो मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में, तब तक के लिए अपना ध्यान रखिए। थैंक यू।